Welcome to this MDNet segment concerning electronic prescribing. Using the system from the main dashboard, we're going to show users how to create an electronic prescription for patients that currently don't have charts within the EMR system. And there's a couple of functions that we have to do in order to achieve this result. The first thing we have to do is, because the patient doesn't have a chart, we need to create a chart for that patient. So we're going to click on the new chart quick add from the dashboard. You'll notice here that we have some median requirements or mandatory information requirements in order to create a chart. One of them is the date of birth. So we're going to go in and we're going to create a date of birth for this patient. We can use the format that is set up to the right here, where you can see where we have to put it in by month, / day / year, or we can use the calendar feature by clicking on the calendar icon, and we can use the up and down arrows to select month, select year, and then select the day. After we select that, we have to select a gender from the drop down box for the patient. We have to key in a last name for the patient, and we have to key in a first name for the patient. In this case, we're just going to create a test patient. Mandatory minimum requirements for information for electronic prescribing is also a patient's address, which we will create here, and a patient with patient address as well too. We can actually go in and we can use the zip code generator that will key in the city, the state, and the country. Also, we need a home telephone number or a telephone number for the patient. And once we've created all this information, so what we need is we need a date of birth, we need a gender, a last name, a first name, addressing information, including a telephone number. We can actually go and we can just save the chart. Once that chart has been saved in the system, we can then go and generate a prescription for that patient. There is one additional step that we need to get to first in order to do that. We've actually created the chart, but before we can actually write a prescription from the electronic prescribing tool, we actually need to go in first and open the chart for the first time. So what we'll do is we'll actually go and find this chart. And in this case, I'm going to look for it by first name instead of last name. And in here you can see I found the chart. I'm going to open the patient chart. And when we open the chart, simply just perform a quick move. Typically we'll go to the encounters or the history tab. We'll just save the chart. Then we're going to close the chart. From here, we'll click on the home key and return to the dashboard. From the dashboard now, we're going to go into our e-prescription. We're going to select eRX without an associated encounter, because we're not writing a prescription for the patient from a patient encounter. We're just going to write a prescription for the patient. I'm going to search for the patient by first name. You can actually search for the patient by any number of parameters that you want. Once I pulled that patient chart, as you can see it shows up here, I'm going to click on Generate Prescription, which initially is going to load the window that's going to ask us to select a pharmacy for this particular patient. So if you can search through your existing records, if you happen to have paper charts for the patient, and find a pharmacy, how we search for pharmacies is we can drop down the search by list, select on zip code, and we can actually go through and search by zip code. And then if we want to actually refine that further, we can again search by store name, city, state, zip, or telephone number. So if you have a pharmacy name or a zip code for a pharmacy, or even a city where that pharmacy exists, this way you can narrow your search. So for example, if I wanted to select Costco, you can see that I'm going to select it here. You get more details on the pharmacy by hovering over. I will click to select, and you can see that this pharmacy has been assigned to this particular patient chart. The next step, what we're going to do is we're going to actually go and we're going to write the prescription or select the medication for the prescription we want to write for the patient. So we simply start keying in. And as you can see, the system presents us with a drop-down selection list that's based on the items that we're trying to key into the field that's there. The more information that you key into the field, the more succinct your selection list will become. In this case, I'm going to choose Add Discus. The system will search for all the information it can find on it, and as you can see in here, we have 3 selections for Add Discus. I'm just going to select one of them, and as you can see, it adds a selected drug to the drug list down here. Now, from the drug list area that it's added the drug name to, you'll notice there's a number of features that are available there. One of them is beside the drug name, you'll notice that there's a plus sign. If I hover over that, I can add that to my favorites list. How I add that to my drug favorites is I just simply click on it, and then I'm going to select a category from my drop-down list. And these categories are configured in the system configuration, so you can add, delete, or create as many categories as you want. And I can simply go down and I can actually select a category to assign that to. And once I've assigned it, then it is now going to show up in this particular area, which is the prescription set. If I click on prescription set, you'll see where it loads all of my prescription set categories, and within each one of these categories, you'll find the drugs that have been added to there. So when I want to write future prescriptions, all I simply do is just go and click on an add drug. I can hover over it and I can get the actual quantity and detail information from there. And if I click on add drug, it'll actually add it to the drug writer window, and then I can prescribe it again. I can also remove these by simply clicking on the X, and it'll actually remove them from there as well too. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the drug type. GQ for genetic equivalents, which are substitutions allowed, or dispense as written. Underneath there, you'll notice that there's an instructions area. In the instructions area, you'll see that by default the system has selected an instruction to key in to this particular prescription that's being written. There are 3 ways that we can alter that. 1, we can actually override this field and key in our own instructions manually. The most efficient way that we found so far is by clicking on the purple sigline suggestions. If we click on that, we're actually presented with a default sigline, or we're presented with condition categories that we can actually open and expand by clicking on them. They actually include suggested siglines as well too, based on condition. So if we want to select one of these, you can see that it now populates the list. Another way or option that we provide for physicians or prescription writers is if you click on the config button, you'll see in here that this is a customizable list window. So from here, the users can actually go and create categories. And from the categories that they've actually created, they can actually go in, and from this category we can actually add prescription lines from here. So from here you can see where we can actually go and create our own customized signature lines, and then we can actually go and simply add them. There's 2 ways to add them. 1, you can select here, it adds to the selected sigline category, and then from here we select on the add to list button at the bottom right hand, which adds it to our signature list. Or we can click on the select button, which actually opens up a section list, and from the section list we can actually select and we can add to our list from here by clicking on apply. Below the instructions line, you'll see that there's a day's supply. How we populate the day's supply list we do in 2 ways. 1, we can click on the yellow box button, which allows us to select from a day's supply that are pre-configured in the list here. Or we can manually override the field, and we can actually key in a number manually using our keyboard. There's a pre-authorization button here, and that would be to check and see whether pre-authorization is required for insurance coverage. In the quantity section here, this section field has to be filled in manually, and that is because presently the system does not have a way that it can calculate the instruction line and the day's supply limit. So for this particular example, we're going to actually put in 1 because we're prescribing 1 discus set. I'll bring your attention to the quantity qualifier. The system sometimes in the quantity qualifier section, the system does not know, based on what prescription you're writing, exactly what the dispense type is. This is typical in effect for things like inhalers, transdermal patches, medicated creams or aerosols. So in the case of the discus, it actually does not know what type we want to dispense on here. So we can actually select that, and there's two ways that we can select that. One, by using the drop-down list, and you can see here that we can actually we can choose from any one of the selected items that's there. Or if we don't want to select from the drop-down list, we can also expand by clicking on the yellow button, and we can select the correct quantity qualifier type. Moving on to the next field is the refill category here. Now the refills can be done two ways, the same as the day's supply, by selecting on a refill number from 1 to 6 here, or we can actually go in and we can just manually key in the number. Underneath there, in the next line fields, you'll notice that there's a medication start date and a medication end date. These fields are automatically populated. The start date is populated by the date that you've actually selected to prescribe or write the prescription using the eRX, and the end date is determined by the day's supply. In the notes section here underneath, there are two ways that we can key in additional notes for the instructions. We can use free text, or we can configure free text notes in the back end of the system, and they automatically will come by selecting from the appropriate drop-down list. Once the prescription is written in the manner that the prescriber wants to distribute it, then all the prescriber simply does is click on the Review RX button. You will be prompted with a confirmation screen that will show how the prescription, the patient information, and the pharmacy. Once you've verified all that information is correct, there's a submit button where if you click on submit, it will actually submit the prescription for you into our electronic system. From there, you can actually follow the prescription as it moves through the electronic system by using the following tracker. Click on prescriptions, go to eRX tracker, and in here you'll notice that any prescriptions that are originally submitted initially go to the queued tracker, and from there, within 30 to 60 seconds, they move to the transmitted and then to the delivered queue. Reverting back to the home page, and then from there we can proceed with creating the next chart for the next patient. And thank you very much for your time today in